welcome from New Zealand, Auckland in New Zealand. Behind me is what they call the 90-mile beach. It's a beautiful beach. If you want a bit of solitude and peace, that's the place to go. This morning, I'm with Elizabeth Clamon in La Grange, North Carolina, and she hails from Bossier City, Louisiana. Speaker, naturopath, and coach who encourages and motivates people to overcome adversity. I'll go through this bit by bit. What I want to tell people, things come to me in the shower. I always have a shower with my guests every morning. Always things come to me. And I want to say this at the front before we go through this. In my experience, most people don't care what you've been through. They don't even hear it for whatever reason because they haven't experienced it. So I'm going to say up front, I want people, I don't know Elizabeth. All I know is what I've done in my research. I want people to listen to what she has to say because we often don't. Because we haven't experienced it, which is understandable. So I think in this particular interview, I want people to hear what someone has to say and what they've had to go through. Is that okay with you, Elizabeth?
That's perfectly fine.
Okay. So let's start with, I was raised in an extremely dysfunctional family where I survived every type of abuse you can think of.
Yes. That is my story. I was born in 1965 in rural Louisiana to a single mother. This day and age, that's not such a big deal. But if you think about very rural, very southern Bible Belt Louisiana in 1965, it was a really big deal. And didn't help any that nobody was expecting me. I was a complete surprise to everyone. So they brought me home with nothing to put me in, and they put a dresser drawer on the floor for a crib for me to sleep in. And I was very, very well loved by my grandparents who actually raised me up until the time I was almost 6. My grandmother and grandfather were my parents. I called them mom and dad. My mother, my biological mother, was their oldest daughter. So everybody called her sister. So I called her sister, and the other siblings in the family were my brothers and sisters. And that's how I was raised. And they were going to adopt me until my grandfather suddenly died of a heart attack when I was just barely over 5. And my grandmother, being a widow with only an 8th grade education and a homemaker and 2 kids in high school, just could not afford to adopt me. So, and I don't know what the laws were then, but I would imagine they would probably be pretty strict about, her adopting me as a single mother back then. So, shortly after my grandfather passed away, my biological mother ran away and eloped and married my stepfather, who was 10 years her senior and had 5 children from his first marriage, and came back 3 months later and took me to the other side of the state with no explanation or anything, just told me, I'm your mother, he's your father, and that's the way it is, and dropped me off at daycare and expected me to just adjust. So that just kind of started out my life on a rocky road, just a little bit. And then in their home, it was always arguing, fighting, physical abuse, emotional, mental abuse. Everything was always my fault. If it weren't for you, I could have done this, or I could have done that, or whatever. A lot of things put on me. And then I have a half brother and a half sister that they had together that are 9 and 13 years my junior, and I raised them essentially while my mother worked. I had my sister from the time she was 2, so that would make me 11, full-time care when we weren't in school. And then my brother was born on December 11th, and my mother, we got out of school on the 21st for Christmas. My mother went back to work, and I was responsible for a not even 2-week-old baby at the age of 13. So I essentially raised them. My older stepbrothers sexually abused me when I was 9 in the home. And every time I got the opportunity to go back to my grandmother's on the farm, that's where I went. So anytime I was sick or an inconvenience or school was out, I was shipped back to grandma. And that was perfectly fine with me. I would have rather been there anyway. That was my safety net. My grandmother was my rock. And then when I turned 18, I met my husband, and we decided after dating for 4 months we were going to get married. And we did. That was my first rebellion, my first big rebellion against the whole system. And I'm happy to say that 33 years later, we are still happily married. So that was one decision I made that was a really good one. So that's just kind of a little synopsis of my childhood.
Hey, that was really clearly put, and you're showing you're a very grounded lady, very articulate. That's lovely. Okay, so always sick as a child, and a weakened immune system. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, as a young child, I was always sick. I caught every cold, every allergy, every strep throat, anything that came around, mostly respiratory issues. And now, as a naturopath, I have learned that we can actually be born with a weakened immune system. And what we don't realize is that those childhood traumas, even pre-birth traumas, I have to imagine that my mother had to know something was going on. I mean, I've had 3 children myself. So I can't imagine not knowing that I was pregnant at all. But I have to imagine that it was not probably a good situation, a healthy situation emotionally and mentally. And I know now she's not a mentally and emotionally healthy person. So those those things transfer to a child pre-birth. And then growing up in that home, growing up, I just was always sick. I caught everything that came along. And as a matter of fact, I was so ill and taken to the doctor. And the main goal of my biological mother was to take me to the doctor, get me some antibiotics, some steroids, get me better as fast as I can so I can go back to school so she can go back to work, because she loved her work and what she does. As a matter of fact, she's not even retired at this point. She's still working. She loves her work so much. And that's where she finds her identity, and where she finds herself is in her work. And so so I had so many antibiotics as a child that it turned my baby teeth black and permanently discolored my adult teeth because I was that sick. And I was continually sick all the way up until my late 30s, early 40s. And that was because of my weakened immune system. And only because of my naturopathic training and education was I able to learn how to go back and detoxify myself from all that stress and rebuild my immune system to where now I usually get sick about once a year.
Wow. Well, I can relate to your illness up to the age of 30. I sneezed about 20 times a day, up to 100 times a day, until I was about 30 odd. Every time there was any little bit of dust, I was gone. I understand a lot of all that because I don't even pick up colds now, rarely get an illness. And I understand a lot of that's about love, the lack of love. Get that sort of illness, that sort of reaction, because you're not being, coddled or whatever. And
Right. And my grandmother was, I mean, she really loved me and took care of me up until the age of 5 and read to me and rocked me and, was a very, very good caregiver. Beyond that, I didn't get a lot of love. But in traditional Chinese medicine, which is something we study overall in naturopathic medicine, it talks about grief. And I was grieving all the not having a father, losing my grandfather, being taken from my grandmother. And that grief in traditional Chinese medicine manifests itself in the airways. So that's why I was always sick with airway issues and upper respiratory and respiratory issues, up until the point that I got severe asthma and bronchitis. I was getting bronchitis at least monthly until I finally got myself on a natural path to healing.
wow, yeah. Well, I know a lot about the Chinese medicine. My partner's from Singapore, so
Okay.
she's Chinese, obviously background. Um, Tell us about the. Do you still feel guilty now and ashamed and never good enough?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Can you
I
tell
have
us about that?
I have walked through that path of healing. When I got into my mid 30s, I don't know what it is, but something about your mid 30s, all those things start to catch up with you. And the way I describe it in my talks is it's like a beach ball, and you keep that beach ball held under the water and you try to pretend like you're okay and you're hiding all that guilt and shame and everything. And that beach ball starts to kind of pop up. I don't know, maybe we get a little bit weaker in our 30s and we can't hold it down. And so it starts to kind of pop up and we push it back down, and it pops up even further and it pushes back down until we get to the point where it's floating on top of the water and we can't control it anymore. We have to let it come out. And I got to that point in my mid 30s when my husband is in the military and he was deployed for 9/11. And when he was gone, because I was so sick, was afraid I wouldn't be able to take care of our children. And we were in Massachusetts and we didn't have any family nearby. So we made the decision to go home to Texas and Louisiana, but there was nowhere for us to stay but my parents, my mom and my stepdads. And we went and visited. We were gone a lot. We visited my sister, whose husband was in the Navy and also gone. Visited my in-laws, visited our friends and everything. But that trip, I just could not hold that beach ball under the water anymore. That trip was for me a revelation. It's what I call my um, my defining moment. It's like all of a sudden my eyes were clear and I could see everything that I had been burying and hiding and trying to keep under. And my husband ended up coming back early from overseas, and the kids and I immediately packed up and took off for home, for Massachusetts, where he was. And when I got back home, it was just severe depression, a lot of just crying, sleeping, avoiding, and finally wrote my mother a letter, and that was not received well. And then letters back and forth and 7 years of counseling, and I'm all better now.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I've also written a letter at the time, and it's amazing when you can let go, and yeah.
It's
What do you
freeing.
think the actual catalyst was that enabled you to let go?
The actual catalyst that woke me up was that same one of those two stepbrothers coming to the house. One of them has passed away in a car accident, but one of them was coming to the house, and my mom and my stepdad knew the reason that he was coming, and they volunteered me to go with him to solve this non-existent problem. And I just thought, you know what? I have 3 small children back there. My husband is overseas, and you're going to put me in this car with this person who molested me. And you don't even care. You just don't care. And it was just my aha moment of,
Yeah.
you don't care, but I care enough about myself that I'm going to change this. And I
Fantastic.
care enough about those 3 kids that I'm going to change this.
Okay.
And that was my wake up call.
Well, what I wrote back on my notes here was, you're the comeback kid.
I haven't had a choice but to be the comeback kid. I call myself relentless because I have to be relentless, because I keep getting knocked down and I just refuse to be kept down. And what I tell people is I did my DNA and QUIT was not in it. It's not there.
It's amazing. I mean, as I read through, I thought, oh, this is going to be an interesting interview, because this amazing comeback kid. And then I got a surprise that I came to, but we'll come to that later. It sort of surprised me that you managed to do that and that as well. So, like, wow. So it's clear you've had some challenges, years fighting deep depression, asthma, chronic fatigue, syndrome, immune deficiency syndrome, and fibromyalgia,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And it
Yes,
was
that's
the
exactly right.
worst time of your life. You mostly spent crying, sitting in my room, rocking in a rocking chair, staring at the wall. Now, when I read all that, I just thought, wow, yeah, tell us about that, because that's just, yeah.
That was when we came back from Texas, and then shortly thereafter, we made another military move. We've made 17 moves in my husband's 29-year military career. So we've been a little bit of everywhere in the U.S. We haven't been. I've been overseas with him for tours of duty, but not to live. But that was when we moved to Michigan. It was a very cold, very desolate place, and the people around us weren't really friendly and open, which I had been very used to growing up in the South. And 4 months after we moved there, my husband was deployed again to France this time. And that was when all the letters were going back and forth between my mother and I and my family, and her brothers and sisters got involved in it. And it just felt like everybody was attacking me. And I got to the point where I just wanted to disappear. And that's what I told my husband on the phone one day. I just want to disappear. And his interpretation of that was I wanted to commit suicide. My interpretation was I want to get away from this pain. I want to be like an animal and crawl away and let my wounds heal in a small, dark space. So the smallest, darkest space I had was my bedroom. And I sat in my room in the rocking chair for weeks. And I mean, I had to function at a level because of my children. I had to feed them. I had to make sure they had what they needed. But any time that I wasn't consumed with taking care of them, and at that point in my life, they were the only joy in my life, the only thing that I could get joy from. And then that was fleeting because it was ripped right back away from me. And I finally emerged from my room angry and in a rage.
Wow.
And then I tell people it was like being a volcano. I was spewing lava, unfortunately, on the people who were nearest to me, which was my husband and my children. And I just went through cycles of in the room rocking in the rocking chair crying and then spewing lava. And one day my husband came home for lunch, and I homeschooled my children. So I was home with them all day, every day. And it had been a particularly bad morning, and I had just been in a fit all morning. And my daughters, when my husband finished lunch, they grabbed him around the waist and they said, "Can we go to work with you? Don't leave us here with her." My heart was broken, just broken in that moment. It brings tears to my eyes to think about it now. Um, and I thought, this just can't go on. And I called and made an appointment with my doctor. And I said, I need help because I can't I can't go on like this, and I can't keep treating my family this way. And she gave me a prescription for 30 days of medication, of antidepressants. And she said, she gave me a list of 10 counselors. And she said, you have to go see a counselor before I will write you any more medication. Because we really felt like there was a brain chemistry imbalance. Because, of all and now learning about adverse childhood um, syndromes and every adverse childhood experiences and all those things, we know that changes our brain chemistry. So she really felt like she needed to help balance that brain chemistry, but that I needed to be in therapy. And I went through that list and interviewed every therapist on that list, just like I was interviewing an employee. And I said, what do you believe about this? And what do you think about this? And what's your history on this? And I found the perfect counselor for me, who is now my dear, dear friend, but walked with me for 7 years of healing, sitting at her desk crying, going, why me? I don't understand. I don't get it. Why me? Why me? And I told my kids at the time, my kids would ask me, what is it that Miss Kathy does for you? And I told them, she's like a new pair of glasses. I put on, when I go to her, she helps me see things clearly. And I was seeing things through a distorted view of my childhood. And she helped me to be able to see that hurting people hurt people. Maybe they didn't intend to hurt me. They didn't intend for those things to happen to me. They certainly did not know about the abuse that I suffered at the hands of my stepbrothers, which I always thought they did. Because as children, we think our parents know everything. We think adults they know everything. And I know that they didn't. And so it helped me to walk through that, and it helped me be able to forgive them. And that was really a big turning point for me, was being able to forgive them. I could not stay in relationship with them anymore because everything I built up, they ripped back down. Mm-hmm. And so I had to walk away from that relationship. But I was able to walk through and get healing and freedom for myself and stop being a volcano.
Well, anybody listening, I hope you didn't miss that bit about how to choose a coach, because I think that's so important, to go through the process. Don't just listen to what the person says, validate them, check with other people, see who you think. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong the first time, even if you choose the wrong one, as long as you start to learn what works for you and what doesn't, and do the due diligence. I think that was great the way you explained it.
Yeah. Exactly. And everybody's different. Every coach is different. Our approach is different. Your beliefs are different. So you really do need to interview them. I tell people the same thing about doctors. I don't just go to a doctor. I go and I interview them. I set up a consultation before they ever even examine me. We have a consultation. We sit down and we talk, because I need to know what their philosophies are and how they think. And so you have to do that with any caregiver, I believe.
Oh, me and my doctor, we always hug and we always have a good chat. And I chose him specifically. It's a long story. I won't bother that now. But yeah, that is so important, what you're saying.
It is. And we don't often realize that we have that power, because we think, oh, they're the doctor, they're the one with the degree, they know everything. And they don't, because they don't know you like you know you. And it's very important.
That absolutely wonderful stuff. Yeah. Tell me, you still with your husband?
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us about your husband, and how many, you got 3 kids? What are their ages?
3 kids. 31, almost 29. She'll be 29 on the 15th of August, and 24.
So is that a boy, girl, boy?
Girl, boy.
Girl, boy.
My boy is my baby.
I want to hear about your husband, because it's like, at the moment, what I've got is he's in the background there and he's always there. But I'd like to hear a little bit more about him.
He is absolutely wonderful. He is a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. We started out 5 years after we got married, he decided, we already had one child and one on the way, and he decided he wanted a different career. So he went back, he went to the military, in the military, and went back to school at night and got his degree, and then got his commission. And he is a lieutenant colonel. He oversees the maintenance on the aircraft. So we have, like I said, moved a lot. He is an extremely loving, generous person, very gregarious and outgoing like I am. We're a lot alike in that way. He's just very supportive. And through all of that, he was just there for me. Anything I needed, he has always been there for me. And he has done everything. And I'm sure you're going to ask me about the next big hurdle in my life, so I won't tell you about that until we get to it. But he, I can't even find words to describe how awesome he is, and how he has always put me and the children first. And of course, his job calls him away, and he has to be away and go and fight wars and do that kind of stuff. But he's always, his first and main concern is always myself and the family. And he has, he's just my other half. We're just two halves of a whole. And we are a package deal. Most people, you get one, you get the other. We're pretty much together, unless one of us is at work, or both of us are at work. We're pretty much together, and we like to do things together. We enjoy the same things, and enjoy the same vacation spots and all that kind of stuff. So he's just a great, great guy.
Yeah, so anybody who's watching, especially the blokes, just listen. It can work. Don't put everybody in one basket, because everyone is unique.
Yes.
You work on yourself, you understand yourself, and what you want will appear. You don't have to go looking for it or fighting it or whatever. You just be the best you can be, and what you want will happen.
Right.
That's I mean, that's amazing. I mean, and don't forget that the future. I must not miss that question. All right. How did you wean yourself off the pain pills? I know part of that was your natural therapist help. Was that the only thing, or how did you manage to take that move from one to the other?
Well, before the pain pills came along, because during all of this, the only thing that the doctor was prescribing for me was antidepressants. And that was to help with the fibromyalgia, and also to help with the brain chemistry imbalance from the childhood. But you haven't gotten to, and I know you've read about my next big hurdle. That's when the pain pills came in, was after that. And that was about
Well,
6
tell us
months.
about it now. Go on, tell us about it now. Go on.
About 6 months after I got back on my feet and was really feeling better and feeling back to myself after walking through all of that with Kathy, and healing from all that trauma, my children and I decided to take a vacation and go home to Louisiana and visit my husband's family and our friends back in Louisiana. And on our way back, we met my husband and my oldest daughter, and went for a camping trip with his family as a small family reunion, just his siblings and his parents and all the nieces and nephews. On the way back from that, we were going into Michigan on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock rush hour, and pulling our camper fully loaded, and a semi truck stopped suddenly in front of us, and we could not stop. And it just so happened that my son was in the back seat. He was 11 at the time. He had asked me a question, and I had turned around to answer his question. So my spine was completely rotated, and we hit the truck. And then the camper hit us, and then our daughters were 16 and 18 at the time. They were driving my husband's truck. They hit the camper, and the camper hit us again. So I tell people, in one fell swoop, we lost both of our vehicles and our camper. And praise the Lord, everybody walked away except me, and I kind of hobbled away. And that was Major thing for me, because I had always been very, of course, being a military spouse and everything, had been always independent, self-sufficient. I love those pictures of the military guys when they're holding up the world and they have all of the firefighters and everybody, and they're holding them up. Well, if you think about it, there's a military spouse under there that's holding them up and juggling everything else in her other hand. The house, the kids, the job, the whole other thing. So I had always been extremely independent, and that accident broke my sternum, herniated 2 discs in my neck that pinched nerves, ruptured a disc in my low back that damaged my sciatic nerve and damaged both my knees.
Wow.
The accident was so severe that we were trapped under the back of the truck. My husband had to crawl into the back seat and kick a window out with his feet and pull my son and I out of the car to get us extracted from the car. And I spent 5 days on the cardiac ward, with them, making sure that that broken sternum had not damaged my heart or my pericardium in any way. And to top it all off, I had just finished my naturopathic degree about 3 months earlier. So I was in the process of renting an office space from a person I knew who had a vitamin and mineral store. So I was all set to start my career and start my life, and bam. And
Oh,
it took 7 surgeries, and 12 years of being bedridden and on pain pills and injections to get back on my feet, even with my naturopathic education. So I tell people that I coach, if you're dealing with chronic pain or chronic illness, I can understand it from both perspectives. I can understand it from the naturopathic perspective, and I can understand it because I have been there. I know, and I know what it takes to come back from that.
and you've also proved you can come back.
Yes, you can, and anyone can. You
Yeah.
just have to switch your mindset. And that's what it was for me. It was changing my mindset. Even though I had the knowledge, I was in so much pain and so much just constant, another surgery, another this, another that. And I just was stuck in a cycle, and I couldn't even get myself out of that cycle. And my last surgery was in December of 2014. And I was in the hospital. It was supposed to be an outpatient procedure. They could not control my pain. And they wanted my husband to take me home because the insurance company wants you to go home within 24 hours. And my husband refused to bring me home. He said, I'm not taking her home, because if you can't control her pain here, I'm just going to have to call 911 when we get home, and we're going to have to take her back to the hospital. So he wouldn't take me home. So they put me on the floor, and I blew 3 IVs. They were giving me injections for pain. They were giving me IV pain, and they were giving me pills for pain. And I still was going into shock from the pain, because of that 12 years of pain medication had just left me at the limit. My body, my body wasn't using the pain medication anymore.
Yeah.
And I had an epiphany, I guess. I just was going into shock, and I looked at my husband and I said, I'm done. I'm just done. I'm not doing this their way anymore. When I get home, I'm doing this my way. And so when I got home and I recovered from that surgery, I made a plan. And I made a 4-step plan to heal mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And it started with cutting a half of a pain pill a month. And the next month I cut a half of a pain pill, and I wrote everything on a calendar, and I just made a path. I'm going to go from laying in bed all day, every day, to sitting in the chair for 5 minutes and then laying back down. And I just slowly, I started chiropractic care 3 times a week. I started massage therapy twice a month. And I started detoxing my body from all those chemicals with herbs, with an organic whole food diet. And what I was going to tell you about my husband is, after the accident, I was completely disabled. I couldn't even bathe myself. I couldn't do anything. And he would have to shower me, wash my hair, fix my hair. And he did all of those things But the
Wow.
one thing he refused to do was shave my legs. I, you shave your face every day. What is the difference in shaving my legs? Would
Hey,
not do
that's male logic. That's male logic. Hey, you shave your, that's male logic.
it. Exactly. That was male. I didn't ask him to do my arms. I just said do my legs. So my 16-year-old had to do that for me.
Well, you know, what I pick up from there is, number one, 12 years. It's a long time. Don't think you can go tomorrow, see somebody or whatever and get the great fix. Doesn't matter what people promise. Number one, that's 12 years. Number two, you had great support. So if you haven't got support, get it. There is always people around who will support you somehow. And you just can't do it on your own. And the last thing I get was, you can make it.
Yes.
If you only choose that that's what you want, you can make it.
But you have to get to that point where you change your mind.
Yes.
You have to. And I had to get to that point, and it took 12 years. Even knowing natural medicine like I do, it took me to that point where I was at that point of going into shock, where I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And it took another 2 years to completely get off the medications, to get my body detoxed, to get to where I could exercise. And I still can't, I'm still never, my body has been forever altered because of that accident. I have plates and rods and screws in my back and surgery on my knees. But I am at a point now where I can successfully run a business. I can go out and speak and stand on stage for an hour and speak. I have a book coming out later this year. I have several books coming out, a couple collaborations, and my own book coming out later this year. So you can, if you just make up your mind and you get somebody, I tell people, get a coach, get a doctor, get a counselor, get somebody to walk with you, somebody that can guide you. And I tell people, if they decide for me to be their coach, I'm their GPS. You can drive from one coast to the other, and you can get there without a map or a GPS, but you're going to take a lot of wrong turns and delays. But if you have a GPS, it's already been there, that already knows the way. It's a whole lot easier to get there, and it happens a whole lot faster.
It's a very good analogy. What I'll do is I'll plug in here a little promo for the doctors and hospitals and things. It's important to remember they're also human. They aren't also perfect. Many of them aren't. Some of them are brilliant. Some of them are definitely not so brilliant. But all they can deal with is what they know and what you present them with. They don't know all about your history. They might learn a little bit, but they don't know that. So they can only focus on what the current problem is. And they do a great job, a lot of them, magnificent jobs. In the end, you had to make the choice as to what was best for you.
Right. And I had to decide that I was done with trying to control it with just medication, because up until that point, I was just trying to control my pain and get from one day to the next. And I had to decide I'm ready to make a change. And that's what I tell my clients when they come to work with me. Are you ready? When we do our discovery call and we do that interview that I was talking about, are you ready? Because otherwise you're just throwing money in the trash. And I don't want your money if you're not ready to make the change and to do the work, because it takes work and it takes determination.
I love that. You know, I won't take anybody's money if I can't add any value.
No.
I'd rather give them free advice to where they can maybe go and find some solutions. But yeah,
exactly.
No, I think that's so important.
Or I refer them to my blog and have them read some articles. Those are free. They can read those for free.
So I feed my spirit with the word daily. Just, I know what you mean, but just share what that means to you.
As a Christian, I think it is just ultimately important to feed your spirit, because we are a 4-part person. I know a lot of people talk about 3 parts, but I believe we're a 4-part person. We're physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And it's important to heal on all those levels. And if one area is out of balance, you cannot attain optimal health. You cannot balance and be a whole, healthy, optimal health person. So in order to heal my spirit, because I had a broken spirit coming from the childhood I had. My spirit was, well, everything was broken, but my spirit was really broken, and I was mad at God. And I didn't mind telling him that I was really angry at him. I still loved him, and so many people go, "Oh, you don't say that to God. He's a big God. He can take it. He can take it." And so I get up every day, and my routine is get my coffee and my breakfast, and then sit down and do a Bible study. And I do a Bible study, a devotional. And if a verse really speaks to me, I write it on a 5x7 card, and I keep it in a recipe box. And I keep them under whatever that verse said to me, whether it was peace or love or happiness or whatever. And then sometimes I'll write it on 2 or 3 cards, and I'll put one on a mirror, one on the by the sink, so that I can read it every day and remind myself. I especially had to do that when I was going through counseling, because I had to replace a lot of the lies that I was told as a child. You're not good enough. You're not worthy enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not thin enough. I had to replace all those lies with the truth. And the Word of God is the truth. And so that's what I do every morning. And then I have my prayer time, and then I turn on praise and worship music, and I listen to that while I work. And that just helps keep me motivated and keep me going. So I have to do that. That's my daily ritual. And it's just like if I skipped my coffee, it'd be the same thing if I skipped my Bible study. It's not a pretty thing.
That's a great answer. Okay, stress is a killer. Yes, stress kills. In modern life, we live in a constant state of stress, and it is the cause of many of the chronic conditions we suffer from today. So let's hear a little bit more about that.
Yes, if you think about it, chronic stress, and especially living in this modern society, we constantly have demands on us all the time, all our waking hours, and sometimes in our sleep, we wake up thinking about those demands and what do I have to get done tomorrow, or what didn't I get done today. So I encourage people to de-stress, to take time to feed your spirit, whether it's with the Word, whether it's doing yoga. I highly encourage people to do self-care. And if you think about it, the cause of most illnesses today is inflammation. The cause of inflammation is a poor diet and stress. That raises our cortisol levels, raises our insulin levels, makes us insulin resistant. Then we end up with chronic diseases. So if we can keep those levels down by eating a good, healthy diet, supplementing with vitamins and minerals that we don't get from our diet because our soil is so depleted, and if we can keep our stress under control. So one simple thing I tell people to do when you have your phone or your iPad or whatever you use, I use my iPad for business all the time. The front page of my iPad is empty, and it has the Serenity Prayer on it. Today I will change the things I can, and I will let go of the things I can't. And I don't have any apps on that page. So when I open that up, I don't have 10 apps screaming at me with little numbers, 10 here, 5 here, 7 here. I just have that page, and I can take a minute, take a deep breath, read that Serenity Prayer, and say, okay, I'm going to do what I can do today. And with my health conditions and there's some days I can't do as much as I had planned, and that has to be okay. And then my apps are on the next page, so then I can swipe over when I'm ready to start tackling those things. So we have to just find little ways like that help us to get through the day without feeling so stressed and so in demand. That stress was a good thing when we had to fight or flight, but now we stay under fight or flight all the time, and we need to just step back and take a breath, just like your scenery behind you there makes me go,
Some people don't even notice it.
Oh.
which is that, yeah. So I'll tell you, when I go to bed, I always say the Lord's Prayer. And the key
Mm-hmm.
things for me, the really important thing is, forgive me my trespasses and those who trespass against me. And you know, sometimes that's real tough.
Yes.
I keep telling myself every night, and I say it as if it's too automated. So I have to say it again to make sure it sinks in here. And forgiving people sometimes that's tough.
It is extremely tough. And the thing for me was when I was going through all that with my family, all my Christian friends would say, well, you know, you have to forgive them. You know, you have to forgive them. And I'd say, I know I have to forgive them. But it's not like they cut me off at the stop sign and just made me angry. This is 30 years of accumulated abuse. It's going to be a process. It's going to take me a little while. And people who don't have that kind of thing to overcome and forgive don't understand that. And it takes time, and it's not something that you can just will to happen. You can't will yourself to forgive somebody. It's a process you have to walk through with God.
Yeah, Sue, I forgive when I think about it often. Um, it's I have to tell myself they did what they did because of who they were at the time.
Right. Or
That's
what
how
happened to
I
them.
have to look at it that way, and because then I can and forgive. That's what they did,
Hmm.
okay? Because and for sure, I don't know any better than that. So there's no point in sort of hanging on to that little thing
Right.
because it isn't going to help me at all. Um,
Exactly. And it wasn't about me. What they did wasn't really about me. It might have been directed at me, but it wasn't about me. It was about their hurt, because hurting people hurt people. And
yes.
until and you know, it's just like with my children. I hurt my children during that time of depression and anger and rage, and I've had to go back and apologize and ask for their forgiveness, because I needed to know that they forgave me, because it was never my intention to hurt them. I was just so hurt and angry on the inside.
It's important. And they've all forgiven you, obviously.
Yes, they're all wonderful. They're as wonderful as my husband.
And who else?
And me.
Yes, of course. Absolutely. Now, we're already over time, but that's okay. But so let's just naturopath, which is a key for you. So you're a naturopath, you're a coach, author, you're an expert at overcoming trauma and tragedy to blaze your own path by your rules, because you've not only survived but thrived despite being abused, chronically ill, and left disabled and bedridden for 12 years by an auto accident. You help others overcome adversity and to relentlessly pursue their dreams and achieve optimal health. Now you're the owner, operator of Clamon Natural Health and do natural health consulting and coaching. Now, you know, when I look at all that and think of what you've achieved, it's like magnificent. And then not only that, your first book was Beautifully Broken, is coming out in November. Is that right? And
Mhm.
you've obviously co-authored some other things.
That's a working title. I don't know if that's going to end up being the title. As I'm doing
Right.
my research, there's a lot of books with that title. So I'm
Oh,
not quite
right.
sure that's going to be the title.
Yeah, but be careful when you look around because you think everybody's already written it, but we still need to hear your story.
Oh, my story is already written. I just am working on the title.
Yeah. Your life verse from Romans, we are assured and know that God, being a partner in their labor, all things work together and are fitting into a plan for good to and for those who love God and are called according to his design and purpose.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
from Romans. Very nice. Very nice.
If you think about everything I've been through, the only way to get through it was to know that God was going to work it for good. He was going to somehow, some way, use it for good. And now I'm seeing that come to fruition.
So basically there was your faith, and it doesn't, even if you don't have faith in God, for example, as long as you've got faith in yourself. But God is an amazingly supportive if you also have faith in God. But the
Yes.
most important thing is to have faith.
Yes. And to make up your mind that you're not going to live this way anymore. That's what I tell people is a mindset shift. That's one of my big mantras is I'm done. When you're done and you're ready to make a change.
Okay. So let's get on to your between 1 and 67, your potluck questions.
1 and 67. Well, I've been married 33 years, so let's go with 33.
Oh, that's a nice one. How do you make decisions? You pull your teeth out. Just no, you don't need to worry about that.
Chew my fingernails off. How do I make decisions? Most of the time, when something is presented to me and a decision needs to be made, my husband and I always discuss it. Even if it pertains to the business, if it pertains to his job, we always discuss it because we're both in this together and it affects both of us, no matter what it is. It was always that way with the children too. We always discussed it. So my husband and I always discuss it. We always pray about it together. And then we wait until we have a piece about what we feel the answer is. And 99 times out of 100, we both come to the same conclusion, and pretty much always have. Even in those early years, we pretty much think the same way. So that's how we make decisions, just about everything. And it's pretty amazing now. Even something as simple as dinner, he'll say, I was thinking about having hamburgers for dinner, and I'll be like, that's exactly what I was thinking.
But it's fantastic because you know, don't live life alone. If you've got something to think about, ask somebody. I think that sounds beautiful. So go for another number. Go on.
Another number? Well, let's see. I'm 52 years old, so let's go with 52.
52. Might have had that. This is an interesting question, this one. We have had it before. What don't you know that you don't know?
What don't I know that I don't know? There's a lot of things I don't know. A whole lot of things I don't know. I don't know foreign languages. I don't know how to travel in foreign countries. And I would say right now, right where I am right now, I don't know how to be single. And I got to say, because that is the thing that is on my mind a lot right now, because my husband is getting ready to go in for surgery and he's never had major surgery before. I've always been the one on the cutting table and not him. So I'm very much trying to trust God that it's going to be okay and that I'm going to be okay. So I'd say I don't know how to be single.
So now it is a tricky question because it's, you know that you don't know those. This question is, what don't you know that you don't know? So you've got to use your imagination into the possibilities, something that you haven't even thought of before. Does that make sense to you?
It does.
It's a tough question. It's not necessary. The last person that picked that one didn't have, I don't know if I could answer it myself, but...
What do I don't know that I don't know? That is a really tough one. Where did you come up with that one?
Well, I like to create, but funnily enough, by doing it, I've actually thought of some things.
Okay, well, tell me yours.
Well, in the future, at some stage, we'll be able to walk up mountains and maybe even fly and do all sorts of amazing things. We have no idea what we're going to be capable of in the future. And I don't know that. It's not something I know. I know that I don't know that. But it's just in my imagination, it could be a possibility.
I guess I would have to say I know that I don't know how to program my phone. My granddaughters do it for me.
I love it. It's a great answer. Come on, one more nail biter then. Choose one more number.
One more. Let's go for three. 3 kids. Let's go for 3.
Three kids. Okay. Okay. Do you have any hobbies? And if you do, tell us about them.
Yes, I love to read, and I love to read both educational books and fiction. So I love to read fiction and nonfiction. I especially love personal stories, to hear people's personal stories and what they've come through and overcome. And then my other hobby would be cross stitching. And I'd love to do counted cross stitch, where I start with a cloth that is nothing but a bunch of little squares, and I take a needle and the thread and I create a beautiful design. And that is something that I love to do, and it's relaxing for me.
Fantastic. Cross stitching.
And it's kind of an old-fashioned thing to do, something my grandmother taught me to do that I still love to do.
Okay, now is your moment to promo. Whatever you like to say, whatever you'd like to say to anybody who listens, your promo.
My promo. Well, I would love for people to get in touch with me about coaching and counseling. They can go to my website, clamonnaturalhealth.com. And I have right now, my giveaway on there is, what is your body trying to tell you? And it's different symptoms, things like heartburn and headaches, and what those could mean. Not like Google, like if you Google it and it tells you you're going to die of a brain tumor tomorrow. No, maybe you're dehydrated, or maybe you have eye strain and you need to get your eyes checked. Things like that are simple things, because our bodies are always trying to communicate with us. And we don't often hear, or if we hear, we don't understand what our bodies are trying to tell us. So that's my giveaway on my website right now. You go to the website and you click on that, or you click on free resources. It will take you to that, and then you'll get an email, which is a free 1-hour consultation with me, where you can talk to me about what's going on. I'll give you some recommendations, some things that I would suggest, and then that way, that's somebody's opportunity to interview me and see if that's a relationship they want to carry forward. So I have those going on. I have a book right now that's also on my website, also on Amazon, called The Butterfly Effect, how everything affects everything, how stress affects our health. And that is on Amazon right now, and it's also on my website as well. I have another one that's coming out that is a collection of articles on chronic illness and natural ways to heal chronic illness. And then my books that are coming out at the end of the year, and they can find those under Elizabeth M. Clamon on Amazon.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Ta-da!
Okay, so it's been a marvelous pleasure, a very enjoyable pleasure. My name is Lance Best, Auckland, New Zealand. This morning I've been speaking to Elizabeth Clamon in La Grange, North Carolina. She's a speaker, naturopath, a coach who encourages and motivates people to overcome adversity. I feel compelled to read this in full because it's amazing what you have been through, and still what you have achieved is beyond incredible. Plus you got a family. I mean, when I was reading all the things you've been through, I didn't sort of pick up until later on, oh, she's got this family as well. So I'm going to read your statement. I'm a military wife, mother of 3, grandmother of 2, animal lover, and motorcycle enthusiast. I earned my bachelor's degree in holistic nutrition and master's in naturopathy from Clayton College of Health. I studied psychology at Louisiana Baptist University in Shreveport, Louisiana. I have been educating, coaching, and consulting for more than 20 years. My focus is healing through diet, herbs, alternative medicine, and complementary modalities. I believe to be truly healed and whole, you must find a balance between mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual wellness. My passion is natural health education and teaching others to take control of their own life and health. I am the owner-operator of Clamon Natural Health, public speaker and wellness coach and consultant. Wow! So now the last word goes to Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for letting me come on today and talk with you. It has been a joy and a pleasure. And I hope that everyone listening has enjoyed hearing my story and have gained some insights into how they can overcome adversity and live their best life. Would make a big difference. I mean, I homeschooled my kids because the education system just wasn't cutting it.
Wow.
And my husband and I made the decision to bring them home. And we brought them home when our daughters were going into 3rd grade and 5th grade. Our son never went to school until he went to college.
So, hey, hang on, you didn't have the time to do all that. Oh, it's amazing. What do they do now?
My daughter is a medical assistant, works in a doctor's office, is the doctor's right-hand woman. He tells me all the time he can't get by without her. My middle daughter is my animal lover, so she works on a farm with horses and also manages a store, a country store out where she lives. And my son does cars. He restores classic cars and mostly does interiors. And if you look on my homepage, you'll see we were just at a car show this weekend where his shop that he works in donated and did the interior for the giveaway car for the National Hot Rods Association. And so that's what he does.
You schooled them yourself, and they've come out and they're doing the things that they want to do.
Yes, and they all have college educations, and they all are self-sufficient. My husband and I don't support them. And something else, with my husband coming up to surgery, he's having a knee replacement. And I told them, I said, with my back, I'm going to need help because I can't be lifting Daddy and everything. Our oldest daughter took off not the first 9 days. She's going to be here. And our son took off the second 9 days. He's going to be here. And I actually have a conference I'm speaking at while my son is here. I'm going to drive to Pennsylvania, speak at a conference, and then drive back. So they are just awesome people. And it was amazing to me when we told them, Dad's having this surgery and I'm going to need your help. They all said, absolutely, we'll take time off, we'll take vacation time, family first. And that's been our motto. And to hear that come back at me, it just melts a mom's heart.